it's not so much whether the U.S. or it's not so much whether the Western military wants to. It's not so much whether the military has to exert power. It's whether they want to exert power. Western hegemony, influence, and control has preponderated the earth, and capitalism has won. That's some cool shit to say, but I actually heard someone say that recently. And I just wanted to say how that could be that might be the most wrong thing that you'll ever hear someone say, but on a certain level it might not be entirely wrong from another angle. And I just wanted to point that out, but also maybe actually talk about what could be a remedy to that. If we've a lot of us have probably had different discussions in our living rooms over our life that really amount to what I just said right there. And but in a lot of these conversations, I think sometimes the conversations, they may go in different directions, but we actually don't settle upon like what would be like an answer of confidence, or like an actual remedy, or just a first step in like what would actually be like moving towards like more equitable reality for people. So that's what I wanted to come with in this video is like speaking that direction. And those two books that I showed might be my best. The best that I can come up with along that line. But I had a family member. I had a discussion with a family member recently who's very versed on a lot of like subjects like history, politics, like all kinds of different stuff. But it said something along those lines. And I wanted to say like recently I was watching like, you know, like if you think about it that way, like, you know, we think about like different shows of force that we have, and you know, I've never really done anything like egregious against another person, but I have had unexpected visitors at my house more than once in my life, and sometimes they might have been not too far away from more than half a dozen or a dozen people. But all I meant to say is that I was watching someone recently in a video. I think the man is a young man, like a boy, but a man of majority, but like was still like with the strength and maybe the maturity of like what would be like a boy or a lad. And he had done something like heinous, no less, and not to be flippant with that. But there was like a show of force and like a SWAT team, an actual like SWAT unit that was dispatched outside of his home, and they weren't expecting him, but he descended from the second story window of his home, and he made a break for it. He made a break for the fence at that time, and he was trying to get little on them, and all these people in all their gear and all their training, standing around bantering like they probably do when they're training too. And then the man is like he's ready to go, and he's trying to go, and you know, whatever he did or didn't do, if you're gonna have the rest of your life upended within moments, and you're likely never to be seen or heard from by anyone you know, or anyone that you might want to spend time with, what you had did or not did, that might be your best look, is to make a break like that. And not to be joking about that, but what I meant to say is that a lot of times we do see different shows of force, and like even when I said at the beginning of this video, like with like hegemony and influence and control, and actually feeling like maybe to say self-interest has won on the surface of the earth. But all I meant to say is that like that person making a break for it, a lot of things like seem like one way or another, and I'm sure they probably caught up to him. But all I meant to say is that it's never settled until the last renegade has been rounded up. And then even still, it's not settled until the last message has been intercepted, because that message can live on past the last troop, and it can be picked up by even someone of another side and ran with if it's true enough. So I wanted to say I'm just sending out this video in that spirit of saying that the struggle is never over. And capitalism may have self-interest that we all are a part of and benefit from. has overlaid the earth. We could maybe argue that. Like, I think like the great Bob Marley would refer to that as Babylon, and that there's no getting away from Babylon as long as we're on the surface of the earth. But that yet doesn't define the earth itself or us, and it's more of an artificial thing that's been overlaid over the earth, and that's what I want to talk about. And I also want to say, like a lot of people would say, like, what is life? What is a human being? Such. In my experience, my closest approximation for what a human being is just simply a locust. A human being is a form of locust, yet a self-defining locust with the ability to reach the depths of enlightenment or the depths of despair on how we choose to define ourselves, and then engage with one another off of how we view ourselves and therefore others. And so maybe also with this would be whatever we can do to look at ourselves and feel humble about ourselves, yet open-minded and equitable with other people. That's probably our best standpoint for relating with other people and ourselves. But yet we're still locusts. I think that would be the most. That's how I understand a lot of humans to be, is to just be a form of locust. But I wanted to talk about, to go into that a little bit, and like where I'm coming from with this video, and also I referenced those books. So I'm kind of like, I have like a little bit of a loose stream of consciousness that I've been reflecting on and inspired on this morning. But it's if you'll humor me, it's not random, and it's not unrelated to a subject that I intend as in good faith and inspirational, uplifting, and perhaps a minor remedy in our own life, and then in our broader collective experience, which are not different. So like I wanted to point out, like so this channel is intended as a platform to commend and incite self-expression fundamentally, and then I'm also using my my experience in developing repertoire as an artist and a self-styled artist, and creating original content with access to resources and traditional means of like teachers and education, and then citing some of those, but then also my own understanding of artistry that's both influenced by that, but also influenced by some of my own initiative and creativity. And I'm trying to share all that as maybe like the second tier of this channel, off of just inciting self-expression. But then the third tier, no less, is just to offer original thought and content, and then utilizing this platform to cultivate the skill of enunciating original thought and developing content as an actual skill set, but also a means of growing. So the platform, it allows me to somewhat do that. And then like when I do some of these like these videos of like uploading content with the musical content, one thing I'm doing in there is I'm also developing skill as a performer, because doing an instrument in privacy and in a public venue of any kind is not it's not entirely the same thing. I probably get off into the weeds with that, but I can, maybe some people could make a stronger case than that. But what I meant to say is that there's something unique about performing in front of people, and also when you perform in front of other people, so you're being observed, that somewhat changes I've said in other videos, and I want to talk about a little more in this video, that observing of any process influences that process, and that can also be a detriment or a benefit. And so performing is part of that. And then one thing that I remember from one of my different guitar teachers is that it's important that when you're playing music, that you don't blemish or stop your train when you make a mistake. So it's good to be in the habit of playing through mistakes. So that's part of being a performer, because mistakes are inevitable and distractions are inevitable, and so they're likely to transpire in performance. Like some of these videos, I either make mistakes on the guitar, or I have a dog next door. That dog is something. I could probably do a video about that dog. But all I meant to say is that also informs the skill of performing. And then I do limited takes with anything that I upload intentionally, because if I get in the habit of making a lot of takes, then that's like also reinforcing that habit of faltering or stopping during the performance. So to actually be performing something with the knowledge that it's actually about to get uploaded, is somewhat moving in the direction of having facility as a performer. So that's a skill set in itself that I'm working on. In addition to offering value in content, but such with these different kind of like free form videos about different broad kind of subjects. But I just want to demonstrate how that's part of the greater overall motion and intention of this channel. But what I want to say is like talking about like stuff like being observed. And so like I've had I've also said I want to offer vocabulary terms with this channel. Not in a pretentious way, but just actually to build awareness. And yeah, I think there are different cognitive benefits that come with building our vocabulary, whether that be vernacular slang vocabulary or like nomenclature. Like that's another vocabulary term, which is like specific terminology that's unique to a field and almost like a little bit obscure if you don't have a background in that field, is nomenclature. But then another one is pernicious, and I want to talk about that. And pernicious is something that's very, very subtle, yet very, very detrimental and even deadly, probably more so deadly than anything big we can appreciate, even something as big as an atom bomb. When you talk about pernicious, I'm still in school, and I was doing work at school yesterday, and there was a picture of a man from, I think he's credited with creating the periodic table, and he had insight into how the periodic table in chemistry has been fashioned, and it was a recent update that there's actual a black and white photo of him. And he had a unique look, and it's interesting. They said that he only cut his hair once a year, and so I think that might be more. There could be something that could be read into that in how he approached his hair. But I want to say him creating the periodic table and what has come from the periodic table, whether that be no less than rocket propulsion, medicine, weaponry. If you really appreciate what has been. What has transpired from his maybe humble insights, but yet a unique insight into something that was interesting to him and he thought could be of value. However, that was recognized by other people. And then you take another person, like I think it's the person is like something noble, who is actually credited with fashioning what is used as if not gunpowder. I think gunpowder is like a few hundred years old at least. But this man, he did something about like what is used for like automatic weapons. I think like around the time of like World War I or so, where they were like moving from like different forms of like riflery or maybe like revolvers and stuff like that to actual like fully functioning automatic weapons and the hell that can come from that. So this man he actually had an appreciation of what type of experiences were happening and are still happening off of some of his insights. And he was almost daunted by his own discovery, such that I think he's credited with initiating the Nobel Peace Prize. So the Nobel Peace Prize itself is actually a reference to one of the most deadly discoveries of human experience, being a more lethal form of gunpowder that's used in automatic weaponry. I can't go into weaponry or chemistry, but what I meant to say is that if you think about like having like a person having blood on their hands or having like different types of things that can be reduced to their discovery, these people like that, these people that we may not even know what they look like or their name, they might be more consequential than some of the biggest monsters that we can think of, and they weren't necessarily entirely monsters in themselves. But that's just the power of original thought. And I've said in other videos that I think that original thought might be the purest form of revolution, and that would be an example right there. But in a more, like maybe in a more sublime way, that could be like the revolution we saw in like, to re-reference like Bob Marley and the music that he did, and how that can permeate and influence people on all levels, psychologically, spiritually, psychologically, physically. You know, if we talk about engaging with the ganja like he did, like talking about our physical body, but also like just our mind and our spirit, and how impactful original thought and creativity is in the most sublime and I would say stimulating and in a beneficial way, like what Bob Marley did, but then also like what with original music, but then also like what some of these other people did that with like these different discoveries that had a lot of consequences. But so like, but if you talk about pernicious, like that's an example of like something pernicious. It's like in a little lab, like working up like some little chemistry, because and then it amounts to this crazy stuff. Or you talk about like different stuff that maybe decisions that are being made about like health, and like food preparation and how that's really doing damage and it can be killing tens and thousands and millions of people a year quietly, while we're thinking more about like something like something dire, drastic that happened like on a, like in a robbery or like something that would be in the news. But there's a lower level that's way more, that's a little bit more patient, but it's way more deadly and way more cold when we're talking about things that are pernicious. But hang on, I gotta go outside. It's cold as hell outside. It's really dangerously cold today, so I got a little bit, I'm gonna give myself a little bit of pass for having like a little bit of snot running down there because it's cold. But we're talking about pernicious is like really low key deadly stuff, and sometimes like it can be way more. If you want to talk about something scary, is like imagine you think about like imagine like you find out that about like an assassin or an informant, and then you realize that they had been way in your midst, like they had been like laughing with you, they had been like getting something to eat with you, sleeping in the same bed with you, stuff like that, like, and you're like, and then somehow you survive that and you realize how close you really were to danger. And it can be really cold when you see a person's real face, or like you see what was about you. It can be cold, and some of that might even be yourself. Like sometimes we actually don't know the person in the mirror that can be the one that's the most dangerous to us. So I want to say in that vein, like so I've had like a couple of different comments in my life that are like that I would kind of like take aback now, and I'm talking about observing the process. Now, when I played basketball when I was young, and one of the only times I really got hot. I mean, I got like all the stuff I had done practicing there's a lot of rivalry in sports, like, and a lot of like just like there's a lot of like just kind of whack stuff that sports players do. So sometimes a sport player, the person on their team is their biggest competition in obstruction, as a sports player. So getting past your own teammates is part of the struggle to be a great player. You know, there were stories about some of our great athletes like having going back and forth in practices with different people, and so I meant to say is like getting past your teammates is as much competition as getting past anyone on another team, if not more. But it can also be similar, like in our families and relationships, where in a certain way we're better for these things when we get through them because we learn a lot. But that can be like where the real competition and even damages is the people that are ostensibly on our side, and they may not even know they're doing damage to us. Because I talked in another video referencing scenes from Pulp Fiction that a person doesn't necessarily have to mean you harm to do you harm. So I meant to say is that there's two sides to all things, and we're talking about observing the process. One of the only times I really got hot in a game, it was when that game was attended by my mother. And my parents didn't get out to a lot of my games. Like they were either working or they didn't really know what I had going on in sports. But I was actually like I was having a lot of participation in sports on school teams and high school and middle school and the beginning of high school. But so there was a lot of antagonism and really just kind of like weird vibes from teammates, coaches, audiences, other team players on other teams. There's just a lot of like really weird vibes that were kind of like whack, if I'm being honest, about like playing organized sports. So in a certain sense, I would say maybe organized sports were kind of whack in my experience, as much as I love basketball, and was kind of engaging with sports to be like with my hoop dreams. I think playing sports, I got invited to like one cool party that I might not have got invited to otherwise. And then like I had a beautiful girl come up to me and recognize me by name and like, oh, you're such and such. That happened to me one time. And then I got hot in a couple games, and then I was having like a little bit of clout at school after that game. But all I meant to say is that my mother had been present at that game, and something about the connection between a person and their mother, it's really like nothing in this world, and it's the purest form of love. And I think that can get a person hot sometimes, like in a game or something where some of our best can come out by being observed by people who love us and who we love. But at the same time, sometimes their observation can also be detrimental, because I've had experiences like where I had a friend once, and we were out somewhere, and then this kid had like glasses like I have now, but I looked a little bit less nerdy when I was younger, and this kid was like he just had glasses while we were playing basketball, and I was like, man, he looks like he could read the shit out of a comic book. And my friend was like, my friend thought that was funny, but then like later my friend was like, yeah, man, I think you can get on with girls because you can actually make a girl laugh. And when he said that, it might sound like a compliment, but in a way it was kind of like it was kind of like whack in a way. And then like along that same line is like a long time later, like one thing I've developed as a person is getting comfortable with eye contact. So like I understand like what eyeballing actually is, and what it can be like, what kind of power you can have by like avoiding people's eyes, like you're trained to in the military. But I also think there's something to be said for being comfortable with eye contact. So like I've become more at different times I've learned there was a girl that I met in high school, and then like when I first got out of high school, I had a job at at a shoe store, and I got a lot of like confidence engaging people. But this girl from high school, she was telling me that like she had some boyfriends that were like they were like some real they're like some smooth ladies guys, and some of them I used to have like a ball fade, and they gave me props on a ball fade. But she was telling me one time after high school that she was like, they know how to smile with their eyes. She's like, and you can't do it. She's like, see, you can't do it. But there's a certain thing of like smiling with your eyes. And she told me that like way back in the day, coming out of high school. But then I slowly I engaged with that idea, and I got comfortable in like at different times I've been able to smile with my eyes. Some people might know what I'm talking about with that. But I was at a drive-through with my mom like maybe like a year or so ago, and then she was like she was pointing out my eye contact with the person there, and my she was pointing out my engagement with like a female person taking my order, and I wasn't trying to lay moves on her, but it was just like it was a healthy interaction between us, and it had to do with a lot of growth to be able to do like that. But when she said that, it was kind of like again like kind of like observing a process where like when you point out certain things, like some things are better left unsaid. So that might be one of those that was like that. And then another time I was recently I was at a store with some associates, and like I was giving someone with a big body frame a hard time, saying like, "Dang, I feel like I'm about to get bounced out of here when the big boss comes out here looking all buff like that." And then we were having a good time, and then later my mom was like, "You're very easy with people." And then like a couple of days ago, I was like, I was just like saying some crazy stuff around my family, like joking, and then she's like, "Oh, you're making like a lot of jokes, like almost like the comedians do." But what I wanted to say is that when you point out, I've said in other videos that when you point out something about someone that they should well likely know about themselves, if they are themselves, in a sense you're mocking them on a very, very sophisticated, subtle level. You're actually mocking somebody. So I would say all those statements right there, I was actually being mocked. As strange as that might sound, it might look like a compliment, but it's a form of mocking. And I actually became conscious that my mother has a very strong tendency to mock me. Another thing, I was taking some books out of my house because I have one of my vices is that I read a lot of books. and I was putting some books like, and I had like took some off the shelf and I put them in there, and then she was like imitating the way that I just put them in there, like I didn't know how I just put them in there, and so again I was actually being mocked right there, and I was thinking like, if you take that now, I've had enough experience to recognize that to actually to think twice about some of those stuff that might go past people. But if you think that I've likely been experiencing that all my life, like to where I was very young, to where even like a person that like, I would think of my parents as being like good parents, and they would seem like good parents for all intents and purposes, and not like the real like the real problematic parents like people have had to transcend, heaven forbid. And there's still lessons in love and all that, but some people have had really, really challenging parents, and then some parents, they seem like they're all good on the surface, but yet these type of behaviors of actually mocking your own child. I experienced that to the present day in my late 30s, so I was likely experiencing that all my life, to where I was less and less conscious, liminally, or aware of behavior. And so you take that, and then you also have like a parent that was alcoholic, and then that person not really addressing the fact that their child is existing around an alcoholic. That's like a lot of it's a lot of detriment. And I've had, like I said in this video, like having visitors that I wasn't expecting. Some of it had to do with how I was actually feeling, having come through a lifetime of this, and not understanding how serious that is. But I want to say that that's an example of something that's pernicious. So then going beyond that into where I was coming with this video in the beginning of this, is saying that there are also equally and more daunting things that are as drastic and dire as anything, but they can be very, very subtle and pernicious, and we might not, and sometimes it's not only the effect of what's pernicious and the cause of what's pernicious, but it's the mechanics of how that has come to be and how that is yet pernicious. It's the mechanics can be as pernicious as the cause or the outcome, is what I'm saying in this. And so, some people would say that. So again, to reference family. Now, I have I'm from like maybe like what you would call like a lower middle class background. Like both of my parents were very intelligent and highly educated in their way, and had different levels of degrees to go with that, and then different like influential and powerful jobs. But they were still more so low income and lower middle class. But like our family had another family that was like what you would maybe consider like yuppie or uppity, like one of them being both parents being professionals, like high grade professionals, and then the children being reared in private schools, strong private schools, and then having success there, all the way amounting to becoming yet eminent professionals in their own right. The children with as some of the highest levels of white collar work that are available for people without like landed capital and real wealth. So it's still professional and white collar. It's not what you would call wealth, but it's still yet influential in what you might call a yuppie. And I didn't have like a relationship with them, but my sibling did. But they've been a backdrop to our family like my whole life, since I can remember relocating to where I am in middle school and to the present day. But it's such that I can't. It's kind of strange that I can't actually go around my family without hearing at least one of these people's names brought up while I'm with my family to this day. There's a saying somewhere I heard that the realest things, the author Nicholas Taleb, he said, the realest things in life, there's actually not a word for it. Like, if you look at, like, I think the closest word is, like, some people would say things like situationships would be an example of that. But you can have, like, relationships in your life where there's not a word for it that's understood, but it's real. An example of that is like my father had a friend when I was a boy in the Southwest, and he was like we lived in like an apartment facility that was for like students, college students and their families, and he would be like a security guard there. And I always thought that was so cool because it had like the place had a fence around it, but he was up on a bike like in the middle of the night, like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 1 a.m., just like out there trying to see what's up to make sure that it's all good for all of us to sleep cozy at night. And I thought that was some badass stuff. Yeah, I could appreciate that even as a boy. And he had been from Africa like my father is, but he was from like northern Africa, I think Kenya. I've met a lot of really cool people from Kenya over my life. But my father had been from southern Africa. But sometimes he would talk to my dad like when it was like getting like just like late evening, and like I was glad that I got to hang out later because I was getting to hang out past curfew because they were talking. And as he would as he would talk to my dad, he would say a lot like with his body language. Like a lot of times people who are fit or like maybe they're militant in whatever way, or they have a they have like a military bearing, whether like a simple work study security guard at a family place, or an actual some kind of like a highly skilled troop. Like there's certain their body speaks a lot. Like a person of a military bearing, their body speaks a lot. Like when they're making themselves comfortable and they're doing different stuff like that, there's a lot of meaning in their body language. So when this man would talk with my dad, it was almost like he was talking with my dad, but he was speaking to me with his body as he was talking to my dad. And he also he took an interest in me, and he inspired me to participate in something called YAFL, which is like Youth American Football League. And that experience, as I was about like fourth grade with that, and I didn't enjoy football a lot after I had that experience. It was some rough ass shit, even for a little kid, and like going to those practices like as a kid after school, and I had become more interested in basketball. So I was, but my dad made me finish that because I had started it, and it was one of the hardest things I ever did in my life. Even though I'm a man now, that was fourth grade, so maybe that doesn't say a lot of good stuff about me, but it was hard. And but I got a lot of strength off of that, and I think some of my success in basketball, and then being comfortable practicing alone basketball, and then operating alone and somewhat independent as an adult, it had to do with those experiences in sports. And the foundation of it was that football, but also this man. But what I want to point out is that the influence of this man over me is unique. It might be unique among something about Africans, like where I think that in Africa, because of the different realities going way back, we have been more and more communal at different times. Like I said in another video, when I was with my cousins on the reservation as a young boy, we would break the gun in pieces and like play with it because the gun couldn't go around otherwise. But that's actually a deeper, that's something way deeper about us as human beings, and also about Africa, of the actual communal nature of us and our heritage, where in a certain way we actually do exist as one another, and what's mine is yours and what's yours is mine on a certain level. And some of that's actually part of the reciprocity within music that I've alluded to, like in the folklore of the work fields in the United States that might have amounted to or been a part of the Underground Railroad, but then the folk music in Africa before that. A lot of it is this insight that we're sharing in reciprocity and knowledge of, and what are the actual blessings that are our sustenance and existence. It's a shared thing. And so I'm saying that, like with music, is like that's my understanding of what the real music has been and still is. So if you're hearing music that might be well polished or even catchy, but if it's self-aggrandizing, it's antagonistic, and it's really not like it's not breaking game off to you. Like the underlying coded message being the real music in the real sense, and then the harmony and the cleverness being overlaid on the messaging that's going on as the real stuff. But then when it's free of that, and it might be catchy or even moving, but if it's self-aggrandizing and it's antagonistic, then I would lean towards thinking of it as appropriated, but and then for economic advantage. But all I meant to say is that it's different cup of tea for everyone. But this relationship with this person, what I meant to say is that in Africa, in different people that have been in my father's life, a man who is a friend to your father, who's a real friend to your father, he has a certain influence in bearing on you as a child, at least as a boy. That is, it's different than what you would call uncle. It's different than what you would call family friend. It's simply a unique connection that may have yet to be articulated, at least in Western English terms that I know of. to such an extent that there's actually not a word for it, but it's real. And I had a similar experience with there. I take care of a lot of youth in my profession, but there's one family where the father was an African man, and he had a certain respect and rapport when I engage with him, and it's such that if you can appreciate that. Like they say, the lion's the king of the jungle, but yet we were getting on all right in Africa. So in a certain way, when you look at a man, you're looking at something greater than a lion. So that's always the feeling that I had when I was talking to this man who's both of his children I looked after in my role, and I brought the same discipline and correction to his students as all my students, because I think that's the only way to maintain order. According to Arthur Avalon, is that the only way justice can exist is that if it's fair and impartial. But what I meant to say is that I recognize that respect that I had between him, and I think that I might have had like a more influence based off that relationship that I had with him, and pull in respect from his students than generally the other students that I engage with. Not that I approach them differently, but just off that connection that I had with him as a man, and both as an African man. So I meant to say that a lot of our relationships, there might not be a word for it, but I have a sibling who is friends with this family, and their relationship, I don't know what you would call it, because it's not homosexual, but it's so close as to go past what you would call like brotherly and fraternal, and it's like they really are like they are part of each other's lives in a way that I can't really articulate, even though that other man is married. And they have like mastermind, like they're having conversations all days throughout the week about going through podcasts together, like a book club, like podcasts about serial killers, and like really like having in-depth conversations about stuff like that, like as kind of like a mastermind, like you do in a book club. But it's a very unique connection like that. That might be like a modern iteration of like a book club. But I haven't always known what to make of it. And they are somewhat like yuppie, and they have a little bit of like both that family and my brother can lean a little bit towards chauvinism, like thinking that they're what they think and say goes, and that's how it is. And so that's been a little bit daunting and overbearing to be in proximity to that. And it's part of what prompted me into taking maybe a long overdue step into independence. But I want to say that could maybe be argued as a form of gentrification, is what I'm saying. Is that I may have been actually gentrified and estranged from my own family by the overbearing and preponderant presence of another family and some of their yuppie attitudes and sentiments and values, and how that permeates into my experience, not having or wanting anything to do with them, but that I hear their name come up constantly. He said this, he did that. Oh, we talk about this, we talk about that. But it's exerting influence over me, and it's not of my value and what I fancy as being gentrified out of my own family. So what I want to say is that, we talk about there might be not any, I'm going to try to wrap this a little bit quicker, but there might not be anything more ugly than the word manifest destiny, if you know what that word means. And I'm in America. But in a certain sense, the destiny part might not be entirely false if you're coming from what I'm coming from, saying that not that there was anything whatsoever right about that or destined about that, but if you look at the simple mode of production as it was existing in Europe leading into what became manifest destiny, as a function of how people were interfacing with the earth, it no less than what became, as my family member said, capitalism that has won, saying that in the year 2025, going all the way back hundreds of years, that can be reduced to artificial contrivances and means in initiatives in production being overlaid a natural environment, and the outcome of that is maybe a better way than saying colonialism, a better way than saying manifest destiny, a better way than saying capitalism, a better way of saying even imperialism would be to say gentrification. The Native Americans were gentrified. The Africans were gentrified. Europeans were gentrified. People in the Middle East were gentrified. Me in my household, in my present current day, on a level I am gentrified, And so I'm not saying anyone's right or wrong for gentrification. I'm just saying that what we know of as gentrification is that locus feature of a human being permeating and overlaying a natural environment based on self-interest and dynamics that upset the balance of nature. Gentrification. So, and then in another video, I said that maybe this is problematic when we talk about Arthur Avalon as being a knight, and then like me reading his book and